Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining another Speaking Food webinar. We're really excited today to have two great speakers returning again. If you remember, last year they came and did a webinar for us, so they're back again with another great topic. I'm Tracy Bernacchi-Duza. I'm the Senior Project Manager at Food Processing Skills Canada, and I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. Dr. Lizette Rees-Paulino is an accomplished global learning strategist, researcher, and human performance professional specializing in learning design, leadership development, and employee listening. With over a decade of multifaceted roles and experiences across prestigious organizations, she excels in diagnosing performance gaps, designing innovative, evidence-based learning experiences, evaluating learning strategies, and measuring all aspects of the employee experience using robust research methods. Certified in emotional intelligence, Dr. Rees-Paulino is the visionary co-creator behind the ACACOS Leadership Program in collaboration with Food Processing Skills Canada. She holds a PhD and a master's in learning design and technology from Purdue University, where she has served as an adjunct faculty member for the online Master in Learning Design and Technology. Raja Hatoum is a seasoned business psychologist and emotional intelligence expert, specializing in the e-learning experience design and emotional intelligence executive coaching, helping individuals and organizations find and amplify their unique voices. His approach transcends traditional skills, focusing on profound leadership excellence. Certified in various psychological and EI tools and tests, he provides a rich blend of scientific understanding and engaging learning experiences. He is the co-creator of the visionary ACACOS SEL program, which is dedicated to enhancing emotional intelligence and leadership in the workplace. Through a strategic partnership with Food Processing Skills Canada, he is dedicated to embedding vital soft skills in the food industry, elevating standards, and fostering success. Raja's motto, "Go beyond your skills for success, transforming self-reflecting mirrors into windows of opportunity," vividly illustrates his commitment to turning introspection into impactful growth and fostering connections that resonate and inspire. Everyone, please welcome Lizette and Raja.
Thank you so much, Tracy and Marwan. I appreciate the introduction. Hi, everyone. So great to be here with you again. I think our first Speaking Food webinar was December 2024, something like that's been over a year. So we're very pleased and very grateful to have the opportunity to be back now with the topic of employee listening. Raja, I just want to just give you a little bit of a chance to say hi too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tracy, for the uh, wonderful introduction. And of course, we're looking forward to meet you again with Speaking Food through the FPSC platform, and keep connecting and promoting, the emotional intelligence, soft skills for our wonderful F&B industry in Canada. Thank you.
Thanks, Raya. So let's get it started. We are thrilled, as we have shared already, very thrilled and grateful for the opportunity to discuss with you, to explore the topic of employee listening. And the very cool thing about this topic is that it's based on emotional intelligence and is a very practical organizational strategy that we strongly believe, there's many, many decades of research, that it can drive real sustainable change and transformation, positive transformation in the food and beverage industry. For our webinar today, we want to make sure that you walk away with the tangible insights and an opportunity to really put into practice more employee listening, as at the end of this conversation. So here's some of the goals that we want to achieve, during this about like 45 minutes right now, or 50 minutes. We wanted to get a very good understanding of what employee listening is, why it matters so much, and how it is connected to emotional intelligent leadership. We also want to give you a sense of what are the research-backed benefits of doing effective continuous employee listening. Also, because we are aware that in the food and beverage industry, there are many organizations of a smaller size. It's important that you walk away feeling like, hey, here, what are some cost-effective ways in which I can, employ employee listening strategies and tools so that I can enhance team engagement and retention and productivity. We're also going to cover a few techniques that you can take away to convert all the feedback, the beautiful, yummy feedback that you're going to be getting out of your employee listening strategies and programs, how you convert them into meaningful improvements. And last but not least, we want this to be actionable to you. So we want you to spend a little bit of time thinking about a question or an action that you may want to take back immediately to work, to your teams or organization, to put into practice and strengthen employee listening. Throughout the presentation, and for most of you or many of you who have all gone through our programs, you know that Raja and I are always about engaging you, and in that sense, we want to listen from you. So be prepared to participate. At the end, there's a Q&A, as Marwan said, but we're going to be engaging you throughout the presentation with some polls here and there. And at the end, we don't encourage you to use your phone, okay? So as much as possible, stay fully present with us today. But at the end of the webinar, there's going to be a poll where you may need to use your phone. We wanted to, actually, no, you will need to use your phone to scan a QR code so that you can participate in our very last poll. So just keep it close, but not too close to get distracted by notifications. All right. So I want to feed our imaginations before we kind of officially let you know a little bit what employee listening is. So here's how we're gonna, I want you to take you on this, kind of metaphor. So think about each employee, all of us in organizations, as if we are a bucket. And that's a bucket that comes full with really great things, right? We're filled with passion and energy. And we're filled with purpose too, right? And great talents that we bring to work. But imagine in every shift, right? And this is what happens in our lives in every shift, every customer interaction, right? Every single thing we do at work, we're giving away from our bucket, right? So we're pouring water, right? That energy, right? All of that that fills us up, we're pouring it, giving it to others, giving it to our customers. Usually we're going above and beyond. We're giving also to our peers. Maybe we're covering for someone who couldn't make it to a different shift, and now we may end up working even 2 shifts sometimes. So all of that, we're just pouring all that love, right, and energy and everything that make us great at work. But what I've seen in my experience and what the stats are showing is that in many organizations, including in the food and beverage sector, no one is checking on how full that your bucket is. Our bucket is, how full is it, right? Nobody's really checking into hey, Ame, how are you really feeling today? How are you really doing today? What's working? What's draining you? Right? And what can we do so that you can feel more valued or more energized at work? So what happens over time if nobody is checking on how full that bucket is? What's going to happen eventually is that you won't have anything to give necessarily, right? You're going to run dry. The bucket is going to dry. And that will manifest or reflect into you not having the energy and the talent, right, and motivation necessary to give to customers. So, it's going to impact customer service. Eventually, it may lead to burnout, and you may decide to leave the organization. So it's going to increase turnover, isn't it? You're going to be more absent from work, right? So it's going to drive all of that. And the point that I want to make here with this imagination exercise is that when it comes to not overall organizations, we cannot expect employees to keep giving to others if no one is supporting them. And this is a leadership issue, right? So we need leaders to really focus on employees more. That being said, this is not just some really, good story, right? That sounds really good in theory. It's not just theory. So many great leaders, entrepreneurs, and we're showing here a slide with Richard Branson, as you know, he's a co-founder of Virgin Group, really successful leader. He has said it many times, and he demonstrates that in his leadership. He said it clearly, and this is a mindset shift that if we really want to drive sustainable transformation, positive transformation in the food and beverage sector, we got to shift it. So many times we hear participants in our workshops and programs, and even outside the food industry, to say, "Oh no, we're customer first here. We're all about the customer. So what about the employees? What about the people?" And so Richard Branson said, no, it's not customers that are going to come first, it's your employees. You have to really continue to check in on their buckets. They don't have to be overflowing, but they have to be full enough so that they can give their best. And because if you take care, this is the whole business case for why leaders need to focus on the employee experience. When you take care of employees, your leaders take care of the employees, then they will take care of their clients. This is the strongest business case that we can make for why leadership, emotional intelligent leadership is so critical, and a focus on your people and your employees. So with kind of a little bit that context, why employee experience should be put first than the customer experience. What is employee listening really? When it comes in general to thinking about what it is, it's a purposeful approach, right? It's a strategic approach that's purposeful and is ongoing. And it's very effective, especially when leaders, right, empathize. So it's about leaders empathizing with employees so that they're in a way that they're actively collecting feedback from employees, getting an understanding of how they're feeling with their overall experience in the organization so that they could use that feedback to now improve the experience, right? And create a more positive and inclusive culture in the organization. That is, in a nutshell, what employee listening is like in general. Now, we're going to focus a little bit on the heart, because empathy as a concept has kind of, it's connected to emotional intelligence. And I'll just pass that on to Raya, who's going to contextualize it a little bit more for us.
Yeah, thank you, Lizette. Some of our graduate on FPSC, from the programs like Akakos and Akakos Plus Challenge and Refining Yourself programs for frontlines and supervisors, I believe they come across this module or the framework of emotional intelligence. You see empathy there in green is going to be highlighted mainly around this explanation. But first, let's take a moment to ground ourselves in what does it mean to be emotionally intelligent, or what is emotional intelligence basically. Most of you likely heard the term of emotional intelligence, but just to clarify, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, awareness, and understand and manage one's own emotion, and recognize, understand, influence, or manage a relationship with others. So it has these two elements of awareness and management. This is the core on emotional intelligence. Psychologist Daniel Goleman, who is the creator of such framework, popularized the concept and broke it down into 5 core components, or we call them as well pillars, like 5 pillars of emotional intelligence that matter deeply in leadership, especially in people-driven industry like ours, food industry, service and food, F&B. The 5 components of emotional intelligence are, as you see by color here, there is self-awareness. In our model on FPSC, we say it like in a simpler way, like knowing my emotion, basically recognizing your emotional trigger and how your behavior may affect yourself and others. The second one is on the red quadrant you have here. It's a self-management. So it's basically managing your impulses, especially in a stressful and high pressure moment. That's where you have like your self-control and how to handle your emotion in order to stay adaptable and sustaining that energy in you, okay? In the middle, you see motivation, or that's in the platform in front of you, we call it like motivate myself, but basically it's motivate self and others. So self-motivation is understand others' emotion and perspective. This is the heart of employee listening as well, because this is not just task completion. It's just you need that kind of optimism and energy. Moving to the green quadrant is empathy. Empathy is understanding others. And here, recognize others' emotion, as you see in the green quadrant. Basically, this is the heart of, of empathy, of the employee listening. Because without empathy, we don't see others. And you cannot manage, you cannot link, you cannot bridge with what you cannot see or what you cannot identify. On the purple with managing relationship or relationship management, this is the culmination of emotional intelligence, building positive relationship, resolving conflict, collaboration, teamwork, communication, influence. It's all going on that quadrant. You know, the good things about emotional intelligence as well, that is not like fixed trait. It's like a muscle. Like the more you train it, the more you use it, the more you can build it up. So emotional intelligence grows with practice and feedback. And when you do naturally become better in creating a culture of trust and listening. So here you have this always this triangle of empathy, fostering trust, enable listening, and active listening. Now, here's the key point. Empathy is the bridge between emotional intelligence and employee listening. You can't be a good listener if you're not attuned to the emotion of others and your team in particular. And you can't respond meaningfully if you don't practice empathy. So remember, empathy is the bridge. On the next slide, we're gonna be asking you a quiz. You're gonna see it pop up in front of you. We appreciate if you answer promptly. And here's the quiz. Which type of empathy do you think is the most critical to unlock the transformational power of employee listening? Is it the cognitive? Is it emotional empathy or compassionate empathy?
I think those who completed the Introduction to Emotional Intelligence course, I remember we covered that in that learning course. So if they still retain that, they should be able to answer correctly.
Yes, the course
Yeah.
of empathy at work.
And then the empathy course too. Yeah.
Okay, put your choice and then click submit.
See the results.
I can't see the results. Marwan, can you see the results?
Aaron?
Yeah, the results are in front of me. We have 28 out of 32 that answered. Would you like me to close the poll?
Yes.
Yes, and share, please.
Sure thing. And here we go.
Excellent. Thank you, Marwan. So, what everybody is saying here, 55% is compassionate empathy, is like understanding emotional resonance are coupled with desire to help. So, there's like some action. 34% is saying the emotional empathy, like feeling and resonating with others. And cognitive empathy is 10%. What we're gonna discover, thank you very much for your contribution, is excellent. What we're gonna see together here is just the four level of empathy, and we put them in easy boxes. We start first with ignore, and we added ignore because it's like this is the general practice normally. Um, when we ignore others, you know, no recognition of others' emotion, leader at this level may appear detached and indifferent, you know, weakening trust and connection within their team. There's a big cost in ignorance or ignoring the interactivity or like listening to your people, and that's why we are promoting, you know, um, employee listening. On the second click, you're going to see an animation for cognitive empathy. The cognitive empathy, it's I hear you, you know, like I see you, I hear you. It's intellectually recognizing emotion without emotional resonance, basically. It's useful for perspective taking, but many feel distant if overused. So it's okay, but it's not as effective. On the third click, you're going to see emotional empathy. And here it's just like, I feel what you feel. There's hearts, there's processing, there's a light, you know, shares other emotional state, builds connection, but can overwhelm if not balanced with boundary. And here, you know, that sometimes it's this toxic empathy. It's just like when you disable yourself as well. So there's always certain kind of boundary that you have to have empathy as well with yourself. The last level of empathy is compassionate empathy. Is this the essence of value? Like I care about you and I'm moved to help you. It combines understanding, feeling, and action. It's most effective for emotionally intelligent leadership driving support, trust, and problem solving. Compassionate empathy is the level most directly connected to employee listening. And it's like almost a prerequisite. This level goes beyond understanding of emotional resonating with an employee concern. It includes a deep commitment to acting on the feedback in a meaningful way that drive change. Example, a leader not only understand the employee frustration, but also take action. I'm here for you by reallocating maybe tasks, offering support, making systematic change sometime in the, like work task, work hours, to help the employee feel less burdened and feel supported. That fosters trust tremendously. And this was the compassionate empathy enhancing employee listening. Back to you, Lisa.
Awesome. So now that we have, and thank you so much for participating in the poll, like the majority of you, you nailed it. Compassion and empathy is what makes the difference. We know, and from my experience, many organizations can bark on saying we do employee listening, and they say it's purposeful, right? But they just put all the heavy lifting usually on HR. And then leaders on top, particularly executives, I'm going to call out executives here, they're not necessarily emotionally intelligent. Like they do get the feedback, but sometimes it's like, well, it's more of like I'm checking off, the box here. We're doing listening, we're hearing this feedback, but we're gonna do whatever kind of we want to do. But we're collecting feedback. That's not the point. So we want leaders to be emotionally intelligent, and beyond that, really work on their compassionate empathy, because that's what's gonna really make or drive effective employee listening. So the first definition, I've kind of looked at it generally and say, here's what is employee listening in general. But true and effective employee listening is going to be then driven by emotionally intelligent leaders who are going to, empathize. They're going to look for feedback, but they're going to take the feedback seriously. And they're going to, turn that feedback into action, as Raja mentioned. So they have to use empathy compassionately. And when they do this, really, instead of just saying, hey, here are the decisions we're making, kind of based on the data, although it's probably most of it based on what they want to do, they now bring participants and bring their employees in to co-create. So they make the employees now co-owners of the feedback. They close the loop with actions, and they consult, the leaders are consulting constantly with employees about, hey, what are some of the things that the priorities? What is the feedback that we need to prioritize? What are some of the actions we can take right now? What is a quick win? What can we do together? So they co-create that future together and that better workplace together. So Raja now is gonna walk you through, like, really quickly, what is exactly when it comes to feedback and emotional intelligence, what are some of the behaviors that you can see, spot in an emotional intelligent leader who is listening with compassion?
Yes. So here is just like a particular example to help you understand through the lens of the framework we shared on the previous slide. We're going to delve into emotional intelligence leader, listen with compassionate empathy. First, you recognize that kind of leader. It recognize their own biases and reaction to feedback. And this is important part of the self-awareness, or knowing my emotion, knowing my behavior, my strength and weakness. This awareness helps them manage immediate response and stay open to what others are saying. Next, they present defensiveness. That kind of people who are self-aware, they are like preventing the defensiveness by creating a safe space for open dialogue with the employee and with the teams. This approach encourages honest communication and make others feel valued and understood. Lastly, here on this point, they enable genuine reflection. And the reflection, like we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. By taking feedback seriously and heartedly, by reflecting, leaders can grow personally and professionally, fostering a culture of continuous improvement. And that's like leading by example as well. If you want your people to improve, you better lead by example, as showing that kind of improvement and care. On the next quadrant, on the red here, we're gonna dive deeper into essential aspect of effective leadership, like self-regulation or self-management. is the same words like handling my emotion, handling the relationship. Self-regulation or handling emotion respond calmly to constructive feedback and criticism. So they can absorb, they can acquire that kind of feedback. When we receive feedback, especially critical feedback, it's natural to feel defensive, but an AI leader or an emotionally intelligent leader, we have the power to transform this moment into opportunity for growth. By responding calmly, we demonstrate to our team what we are open-minded and committed to improvement. This approach not only fosters trust, but also create an environment where everyone feels safe and share their thoughts. And this is, psychological safety for the team. In moving to empathy level here, recognizing other people's emotion, this is the EI leader who listen compassionately, show empathy in the following ways. And these ways could be understanding the emotion behind the words, help ensure that all voices are heard without fear. And here again, we go back to psychological safety, well-being of your people. This is not just about listening, it's about hearing the unsaid and recognizing the emotion involved. Remember, when leaders listen with empathy, they create a culture where everyone can thrive. This is like a fostering performance, fostering a positive relationship. And in the emotionally intelligent leader, exhibit compassionate empathy by following through. Feedback, crucial for fostering trust, talking, following through, and managing strong relationship as well as addressing conflict, problem resolution, conflict resolution. Um, by acting on feedback, we show respect and a dedication to improvement. This reassures team members that their opinion are heard and their contribution are appreciated. It's not just words or just collecting things. No, we action on it. We manage the relationship based on that feedback. Finally, on motivation, um, this emotionally intelligent leader exhibit compassionate empathy by using feedback, both positive and constructive. With optimism can catalyze personal growth and drive organizational change and cultural change. This is linked to their ability to motivate themselves, positive outlook, getting feedback, and then that feedback become a tool for advancement rather than a source of anxiety. It's just like, oh my God, they're gonna get another feedback. What did I do wrong? But when there is safe culture, safe space, people welcome feedback. Now let's explore your experience with employee listening within your organization. So this is another poll, and I'll hand you over to Lisette.
Yeah, thanks so much, Raja. Okay. So we want to check in with you. At this point, you've heard what employee listening is, how the cornerstone there in emotional intelligent leadership is really compassionate empathy. That's what drives leader to organically and authentically wanted to act on that feedback. So we want to just check in with you. Like where is your organization when it comes to employee listening right now? I know the poll is up right now. Marwa, let me know when you get the responses.
Yeah, sounds good. We've got 35 in
Thank
the
you.
session, so I'll just wait for it for a minute here and I'll close it out after.
All good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Answering the polls is just like a click on your choice and click submit.
Just another 10 seconds here.
Yes, 9, 8.
Yeah, take your time to
7.
read through the options because there are sentences like a little long.
Okay, got 30 out of 35.
That's good.
Close it out now.
Amazing. Thank you for participating.
Thanks, everyone. Just sharing the results now. There you go.
Okay, let's see the results. So we're seeing here 37% of you, this is the highest. We have continuous listening practices. So you have something like, employee surveys, focus groups, and leaders are following up on real actions. Congratulations to those of you who already have continuous listening practices at work and who have leaders who are invested, right? Who are modeling compassion and empathy when it comes to feedback. We have 30% of you saying that we occasionally ask for feedback, but it is unclear if anything changes as a result. So that represents opportunity there, right? It's great that you have some sort of feedback. There's got to be an opportunity to make it more, more intentional, purposeful, and continuous. But at least you're collecting something, so there's an opportunity. Leaders are open to feedback, but there's no formal process in place. So 27% of you told us that. So it's kind of a little bit of splitting here. And then one of you only said that we rarely solicit input and concerns often go unaddressed. So huge miss here when it comes to employee listening. And also one of you says that I'm not sure really, employee listening isn't something we typically discuss. So the good news is that most of you in your organizations, there's some sort of like feedback mechanism going on. There's some sort of input that's being requested, that's being asked for employees, but it looks like where the opportunity it's really the biggest opportunity here is on acting on that feedback, taking it in more consistently, more purposefully, and acting on that. Perfect. Thank you for participating. So let us a little bit like think about what we have shared holistically and summarize this, because this is what is going to lead to where the biggest opportunity is and what the business case for emotionally intelligent leadership is. So when you think about, let's think about it as a recipe. What's the recipe really for positive change here? Of course, starts with leader. And as I said at the beginning, it starts at the top, right? It starts at the top, start with executives, modeling the way. So it's emotionally intelligent leadership, as you saw. It's going to be here the main ingredient. That's the main ingredient of your recipe. Think it's like the flour and bread. Like it's the main ingredient. It's going to drive everything. And then you have emotionally intelligent leaders. And that means that leaders are investing in their own growth as leaders, right? Many organizations are still missing out on the opportunity to, executives many times in particular, are missing an opportunity to get coached and to get training and development that will help them, really strengthen their emotional intelligence skills. Is those leaders who say, hey, we're going to drive more effective employee listening because now they're committed, right, to actioning on feedback. Not just listening and say, hey, I understand, but I'm not going to do anything about it. So what we saw is like that, in turn, is what's going to drive a positive culture and a better employee experience. And what that results in is into enhance and improve employee engagement. So as you can see here in this recipe, then employee engagement is kind of the payback that leaders get when they listen, when they do effective listening, when they really model empathy, compassionate empathy when it comes to employee listening. This is the payback. So an employee engagement is, I'll say, the key of all the talent metrics or people metrics when it comes to really having a good understanding of how people feel with the organization. They pay back with higher emotional and cognitive commitment to the organization, to their work, and to their customers. And many decades of research, it's extensive research. And in my own firsthand experience, we have seen strong correlations of employee engagement with improving customer service, which drives more customer loyalty. And in the end, that is going to lead to improved performance and reputation for the organization. So this is where the magic happens. This is interconnected, but now you know where it all starts. So that's where we need to, when it comes to listening, to bring back and say, hey, it's leaders. Leaders are responsible. Edgar Schein, who's an expert in management professor, and in his work with culture, he used to say, leaders are the ones who shape the culture of the organization. They decide on the policies. So leaders are the ones who need to continue to invest in themselves and then becoming more emotionally intelligent. So it's interesting. Look at the heart where it shows up there. So we use that heart to represent compassion and empathy. And that heart shows again. So it's almost like when leaders put their heart into employee listening to make it effective, then employees pay back, putting their hearts into their jobs and into the organization. And then just to summarize it, for those of you who love formulas, simplify it. In the end, what is engagement really? It's empathy returned, right? It's like good paid for with good. So the employee engagement truly, if you think about it, is when leaders exercise compassion and empathy with employees, that turn on empathy from employees, which is engagement, is what leads to improvements. It improves their quality of life. It improves, how employees feel with the organization, their well-being, and it improves performance in the end. Now, don't take this as being theoretical. There has been abundant research as well that backs up this formula. And, for when you have time, and I know Tracy is planning to share the deck with all of you later on, we have included references for, what we are kind of highlighting over here on the presentation. But there is this research group, Business Solver. They publish every year for about a decade this amazing report where they monetize, right? They make it tangible, the impact of empathy on businesses. So it shows there, right? It's at 100 billion business case for empathy. So there's a tangible impact into empathy. And this is something you can use your own. Of course, the report has been, just to kind of a heads up there, it's based on US organizations, but it gives you a really good sense of how empathy, right, that human connection is what ultimately leads to improved results for organization. That's where it lies. Just walk you through a little bit of an example. So here is stats, talent metrics and culture metrics, overall organizational metrics that are so key and often represent pain points in your industry. So I just want to highlight here what research has shown with Canadian organizations where these metrics are when it comes to organizations who are doing continuous listening versus those who are not. So let's just start with the king of the metrics, right? In employee experience, which is employee engagement. So we've seen in organizations, food and beverage industry, that 81% increase, like a very remarkable increase in engagement when they do continuous listening, versus the fact that the food and beverage industry tends to be the least engaged across many industries. Like it's concerning. So it tends to be their engagement levels are 31% below the national average in Canada. Let's look at turnover, right? Another huge pain point, right, for the industry. With continuous listening, organizations see a reduction of, about 35% in turnover. But when they don't, especially in a particular case of restaurants, for instance, the annual turnover can go up to 75% annually. Another one that's critical for you, safety. 30 to 40% fewer workplace accidents with ongoing listening, but higher incidents when you don't do listening. And the story goes on and so on, right? So you now know the connection, engagement, productivity. So better productivity when there is continuous listening versus not. And last but not least, employee satisfaction and loyalty increases when there is continuous listening. You would say, well, this is like a generic example. It covers lots of different companies and industries. I just want to highlight that you have good examples right here in Canada. And I was very pleased to identify this one, Joy Restaurant. So I don't know if many of you or any of you have either been there or have worked even for the restaurant. But this case was I was very happy and pleased to find it because the CEO, going back to the top again, Jeff Fuller, he was committed to a people first company. Remember back to Richard Branson and emotionally intelligent leaders that put people first. So he was committed to a people first culture, and he implemented a few listening approaches that you can see on the slide here. So they embedded listening into just the nature of their work, right? So that it was frictionless to make sure that everybody felt that they could, share their ideas and how they were feeling with the organization. So those are 4 different ways that they identified, they implemented when it came to listening. So they implemented shift-based listening huddles. That was like a 5-minute really check-in, what worked today at the end of every shift. That's it, 5 minutes. And it was like a little debrief. They also implemented anonymous digital suggestion boxes. If you remember back in, I don't know, maybe the 80s, that was like a physical box. But now with a QR code, they implemented it through the scheduling app. People could anonymously just share their feedback. They also wanted to make sure that all voices were heard at a common forum. So across shifts, they'll have the managers meet every month to share what feedback was shared across shifts, so that they had like a holistic picture of the needs of employees and how they were feeling. But they also recognize ideas. So any ideas that were implemented that led to change, what they did is they recognized those folks. They gave credit to those who promoted the idea or thought about that idea. And then, listening, great, you're taking action, but we need to build a culture that also focuses on coaching and training and development. These two things go hand in hand. You have to help your leaders understand how they will listen to employees better. You have to also create a coaching culture, and that's what they did. So coaching, again, is when leaders commit themselves to be better listeners, because there's so much about coaching that is about being a true listener. So with this match of initiatives, they achieve impressive results. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they were positive across the board for all the metrics that tend to be an issue in the industry. Look at that, more than 90% felt very proud with the organization. This restaurant has been recognized as the best place to work for more than a decade. And the employees, there's high morale. Turnover totally shifted from like a 200% annually to like 66. Very good. They also were able to hire people faster. So you see 60% decrease in time to interview. That is fantastic, right? Think about it, like you being able, someone leaves, but you're able just to interview people really quickly. Why? Because you have a good reputation. People want to work with you. So you're going to receive a lot of really good applications from really high quality candidates. And then across shifts, because it was listening across shifts too, employee engagement morale really went up. And that was consistent as well. So we have another poll. And this one, we want to kind of, ask you a little bit of what is a barrier, right? So you already told us that, many of you are doing, when you're in your organizations, your team, you're doing continuous listening. But we want to know, for those of you who don't have continuous listening program or doing it more purposefully, what's preventing you from doing more continuous employee listening?
Yeah, you're going to see the polls popping up. This is poll 3.
Yeah, Marwan is going to help us out with that, Paul. Again.
Some technical glitch.
Sorry for my cough. Okay.
Okay, we can move forward, then we come back to the slide with the poll. I think there's some technical glitch at the back, or we can just interpret it and they can answer on the chat.
Yeah, if you can answer in the chat, that would be great too. Sorry, something just got in.
Yeah,
Right.
so here the question is, what's the top barrier preventing you or your team from doing continuous employee?
Time.
Time. So James is saying time.
Yeah, that time, finding time. Okay. Yeah, that tends to be a top issue, like a top barrier for most leaders in organizations is time, lack of time. But here's the thing with time, and I'm glad that you brought it up. So we're talking about continuous listening, but what are certain ways in which, and Jessica is saying fear of not being able to follow through on employees want. That's a fair concern too. We hear that all the time too. Leadership training, all of those apply. But here's some practical strategies that you can implement to make it continuous. It doesn't have to be, when it comes to time in particular, it doesn't have to be something that you have to dedicate too much time to do. Like you can just embed it into your flow, into your experience, everyday experience. If you already have those team huddles at the beginning of the day, or at the end of the shift, just but maybe at 1 or 2 minutes, have like a little question there that says, "Hey, what worked today? What can we do better?" Really quickly, just like a quick check-in. Here's some ideas for very cost-effective ways in which you can embed throughout your day as a leader, as a manager, ways in which you can do more continuous listening. So you can daily, as I said, like as Joy Restaurant Group implemented, you can do daily check-ins. Just ask one question, and what was your experience today with the shift? Yeah, very informally. You can do walk around chats too, what was working today, just checking with employees. Remember, it's about filling that bucket. It's about like checking in, how is the bucket today, because it's important to check in with employees, know how full their bucket is. Also do something on a weekly basis. If you have a weekly team meeting, so you can do listening huddles where you do a 5-minute team debrief, for instance. Some organizations are very clever. They have a break room, and in the break room, they have a board. They split it into 3 columns and say, hey, put a sticky note here, or maybe use, chalk, or it's right on the board. Hey, what should we stop doing? All right. What is something we need to start doing? And what is something we need to continue to do? Very, very simple, 3 columns. And then give employees an opportunity during break to kind of write down their ideas. You can also, as a development opportunity, someone who is, you see much potential in this person, give them an opportunity to be the feedback representative, one of the peer in every shift. Maybe he is the person like his peers trust a lot, and like they really like him. So maybe, why not, get a little bit of a helper on your side saying, hey, can you help me gather feedback from your peers? And then share with leaders, what they're saying. Something you could do monthly as well, again, because the idea is to do it continuously, is digital pulse survey. Like you don't necessarily need to use like a paid platform, employee experience platforms. You can start with Microsoft Forms or Google Docs. And it's very, very simple to implement. You can also ask employees, maybe you can create like a shared document type of journal where they can, share their ideas there. And also make sure you spend time with your employees on one-on-ones, during that supervisor one-on-one development conversation. Also use it as an opportunity to check in again on their bucket, how full it is, and spot any frustrations. In the long term too, those, the previous ones were short term, but long term, there are other strategies. And, on a quarterly kind of basis, you can now do stay interviews. Why are people staying? What do you like? What do you enjoy the most about being here? Yeah, what can we improve? So that could be done every quarterly if you want, or even maybe part of the monthly one-on-one conversations if you want. Team listening circles too is another good idea. So where you have like a guided discussion to explore challenges and new ideas with your teams. And also because we mentioned to really do listening with compassion and empathy, we need to be able to come back with feedback. One of you said, well, there's fear about not being able to follow up. If you collect feedback, one way to follow up is to say, hey, we have heard you. We understand that this is a situation. Just get back and be honest. If the action is no action for now, also say it and say why. That promotes transparency, and transparency promotes trust, right? So it's important to be honest also with employees and say, maybe we cannot do that salary increase, but you've mentioned that you want a little bit more flexibility with your shifts. That's something that, we can work together to identify how we can fix it, right? Or how we can improve it. So there are certain things that are going to be quick wins that you can identify even with employees, and then we have even better ideas as to how to do that. And then there's more officially, more formal, if you want to capture engagement, you can do an engagement survey. Many organizations already have it. They do it annually, or sometimes every year and a half, every 2 years. You could also try, if you're a smaller organization and you don't have the resources, do something more collective. And that collective is could be like a collective benchmarking survey. You bring other smaller companies together, and you can gather the feedback and use benchmarks. If you're interested in something like this, of course, reach out and ask us. And then leaders getting together, having a real review about how they're listening to employees. And last but not least, we have 5 more minutes. So I just want to walk you very quickly through things that you could do. Like now that you have collected all the information, how can that lead to action? So again, partnership with AI, right? AI tools are widely available right now, like ChatGPT. These tools allow you to even really quickly analyze the data, take all the comments and, and organize them into different themes. You can, again, establish those loops and say, hey, here's what you said to us last week or last month, and here's what we're doing. Just be transparent to create that loop. AI also can help you categorize, themes, and then again, find solutions like what are quick wins and what are things that we may need to look at it long term. Sometimes you as a manager, the action is like, you know what, I hear it, that's a very important concern. I'm gonna bring this up to my leader in my next conversation, and I'll get back to you. It's all about promoting that intention that you're there to support them, to help, and do that genuinely. Again, collaborate also with the staff to co-create solutions. You don't have to think that this is just you doing it. And incorporate the feedback. Always update your team on feedback and what themes have come up from feedback. And then monitor along the way and celebrate successes. So that's the end of our presentation. Marwan, this is a little bit of a recap of what we learned today. But mainly we want to check in also with you a little bit about one last thing. Remember, in the end, the most important thing to remember is that we have 2 ears. As Epictetus told, we have 2 ears so that we can listen more than we can talk. Awesome.
Yeah, I want to highlight, Liz, that on one of the comments on the question that we asked on the chat, Nupur was saying no formal process is in place for employee listening, and Natalie was mentioning fear or not being able to follow up.
Mm-hmm.
Christina talking lack of training. And here that tells it all about, psychological safety. Employee listening with empathy, empowerment, enable that kind of transparent relationship across the board that people, they can feel heard. And that's very important. Thank you. So I just want to highlight this point.
And remember, as team leaders, you start with your team, right? Start with your team and be open to be vulnerable. Sometimes we have these solutions. The company doesn't have all the resources. These are important. So what can we prioritize? Remember for quick wins, right? You may not be able to deliver everything that they want, but you might be able to deliver something smaller. That's still important to your employees. And it's important to find out. Excellent. One last question. We want to make sure that we stay aligned with what objectives for the session. So now that you have engaged with us in this conversation, you've heard what employee listening is and its power and ability to transform the food and beverage industry. Like, tell me about anything that you're committing to do after this session. Like, what's a question that you may have that you want to bring back immediately? So you can use a phone. This is where I said at the beginning, you can scan a QR code and share your answer with us. You won't be able to see everyone's responses today, but I know with Tracy, we're going to be sharing the deck with you. And at the end of the deck, we're going to do a screenshot with all the responses so that it becomes a little bit of that wall of commitments that you can now see then what everybody's going to be doing this week or next, but the sooner the better.
Thank you, Lizette. And I just want to make sure that everybody can access this. If you are not able to, for whatever reason, just let us know in the chat. This should be open for you. Now, we are at the top of the hour, but we will be taking a few minutes, if that's okay, just to speak to some of the Q&A. If Lizette and Roger, you guys are okay with that? We have a couple of questions in.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're okay.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And just as another heads up, the chat is open and the Q&A is open. If you would like to still submit questions as we're going along here, please feel free to do so. We see 3 in right now, and we can get started. But yeah, the chat will also be open if you guys are having any issues with the Mentimeter at all. But you guys should be able to scan it with your phone, or if you click on, we'll just keep the slide open. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And then if we just go to menti.com and use that vote code, you should be able to submit your questions there as well.
Yeah,
So
that
yeah,
I will handle the first question, like if you don't mind. This is a little bit
Yeah, why
philosophical.
not?
What's the difference between the morale and engagement? This
Yeah,
is the essence over here around, what is emotional and what is motivational. Like this is like a divide almost. The core definition for morale is like emotional state, is a mood. That's what we study in psychology around like what kind of mood you carry with you, the emotionality. But engagement is like a cognitive condition, is like a how much we are achieving the goal, like engaging towards the goal. Um, what is observed as well, like between morality or what's moral and engagement, moral is could be like positivity and teamwork, something you build, you general vibe in the team. However, the engagement could be like goal pursuit or what we want to achieve together. Now here the question maybe it take you back to what's the leadership role in moral. Maintain emotional tone and psychological safety is your role as a leader through listening and empathetic listening. While in the motivational, it's like you want to inspire, you want to pursue the purpose, you want to enable growth and achievement. So they may look the same, but they are a little bit like different in the core.
yeah, and they're used. I just want to jump in there. Thank you, Raja. They're used interchangeably, and usually when it refers to employee motivation in the workplace. So with morale, as Raja mentioned, morale is the mood, right? That can you can do a pizza party, right, to celebrate success. That may increase morale. Like in the short term, it's more short term morale. It's still energy. It's still positive. Imagine it's when you're dating. It's like the first days of like you go to a date and you're like on a very high on like, oh, it went really well. We had a really good time. Now engagement, like this is where it comes with the ring. Engagement is more long term. It's a consistent, boost in like how employees experience the organization. It's both it's emotional and it's cognitive. So it's about leaders being very consistent, right, and gathering that feedback, ensuring that they're taking action, that they stay consistent. So morale can be short-lived, right? People may have high engagement, and they will need morale. Like you need to build that over time. But someone who with high morale may not necessarily be truly engaged, because engaged is really like more like a deeper connection, true connection to the organization and work. So that's a little bit of the difference when it comes in terms of efforts, employee listening efforts by leaders.
Yeah, thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you. And I see we have two more questions here. So we'll address those. So the second question is an anonymous one in here. And the question says, what is the role of the manager in employee listening? And how is it different from HR's role?
So the manager is kind of the front line leader. He has the front line, like first line of let's say accountability and commitment to employee listening. It all starts with the manager, right? That's where employees, they're the closest to their manager. Managers know what the everyday of those employees of their teams really look like. So that's where they create the psychological safety and say, hey, what are the issues? What are the needs? And I'm here to be that bridge, right? So I'm going to be HR, where in most organizations really responsible to be a guide, to be an advisor, to be a strategic partner to leaders in the organization. They tend to be the ones behind like operationalizing, like when they do employee engagement and in a surveys or focus group, they are working with leaders to make sure that those things take place. And they enable that change too, right? So they help leaders enable that change, identify like the resources that may be required, the talent required to implement, but they work in a partnership. But it's ultimately listening responsibility of the manager.
That's
Yeah.
very true. And
Thank you, Lizette. Yes, exactly. Like to put it in like very simpler way, like manager are the daily empathy engine. They are the one at the front line. They are in the touch with the people. While HR, it could be like the strategy architect, they can design the system to become like a little bit more inclusive or ecosystem of listening. However, if the manager doesn't act his role, then the bridge is broken. And that's why we emphasize on empathy and emotional intelligence to enable that.
yeah. And I think I'd just like to add a bit to that because I remember working in a company previously where, you know, there's the open door policy and you can always go in and you can ask
Mm-hmm.
questions and you can always talk about things. But there's also that notion of, well, what can I say and what can be used potentially, let's say, quote unquote, against me? What kind of
Mm-hmm.
entails that kind of degree of comfort? So even on that point, like I just think in terms of that barrier, do you guys have any tips or advice on how people can kind of like deal with that kind of medium in making that a bit easier and making that open door policy a bit more approachable for some of the employees within that?
Yeah, that seems usually a case of psychological safety, right? So if employees feel like they need to walk on eggshells, or literally like, oh, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this. So one of the ways to do that is to always, and when we launch employee survey programs in particular, or any initiative where we're gathering feedback, it's so important to really give employees peace of mind saying your feedback is confidential. And again, back to HR flow here is to kind of ensure that they're committed to that, and that they really like, you know, like pay back for that. Like they're truly making it easier for employees to know that the feedback is confidential. They're not going to share information. Some organizations even decide to do surveys completely anonymous, right? So that they know in the back end that employees, you know, can say whatever, you know, they feel, like be open and honest about their feedback. In other organizations, what they do is they employ external consultants, because now employees are feeling, well, it's not going to be, the data is not gathered internally, right? It's gathered by an external consultancy. So that means they own the data, and they're going to be more trustworthy in many ways, because they'll only be sharing aggregate results. That
Thank
those are
you.
kind of
Yeah.
some ideas there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I think it's very important for the manager as well to kind of have that understanding of keeping that information confidential as well, obviously with their employees too, whether if it's HR or otherwise. That's a great tip. Thank you for that. We have the third question here, and it's also anonymous, and it reads, how do I know if our current listening efforts are working? I like
Are
that
you want
question.
to take that in?
Yes, of
Okay.
course. Thank you, Lisette. You see, the first thing come to my mind when you ask this question is how the employee feel. Are they feeling more safe? You know, feeling safe to speak up, it means your listening is working out.
Mhm.
Hearing more, not less. So you hear more, like the two ears, one mouth analogy that was shared. Action follow-ups, and mostly in emotional intelligence, and the emotion here involved a lot. There's trust increase. So when the employee listening is working, it means there is more trust within the organization, within the teams, within the manager and the people working with them. Um, so there is like a group discussion, one-on-ones, coaching, feedback, and trust is really like fostering. It thrives, and that's where employee listening make big difference and bridging trust. And your culture feels more human, mainly. You know, like it's not like robotic. There is some emotion, there's some feeling involved. We are like you see the culture is more human. People support each other.
Another thing that we see when employee listening efforts are really working is first, well, check the data, check your turnover data. You know, keep an eye on that. That's why you have to monitor also the metrics in the organization. So how is absenteeism? How is turnover right now? Right, over time. It might take a little bit of time, but you have to be consistent. But for me, like in terms of leading efforts, I get very excited because how employees usually pay constant listening, being heard to leaders is by increasing response rates. Isn't it meeting like the next survey you see those response rates, they usually stay super healthy, super high, often like above 80%, and they keep growing. That's one of the most like direct ways to know that your listening efforts are working, because you get a steady high response rate, and they keep increasing as well. And whether that is focus groups, something super informal, or it's just surveys, you see that consistent increase.
Thank you for that. And I think also there's always this question of return on investment, and I'm sure there's going to be a return on emotional, like that kind of emotional response that you get from your employees. While that might be a bit harder to see than profit margins and revenue rates, I'm just kind of wondering, is that also kind of like coming back full circle in terms of having even leadership and employees also asking, just frankly, how are listening efforts working for you? What would you like to see a change for? That kind of transparency, I think,
Yes.
could also help with that, right? And really gauge that effectively and visually right off the bat.
Bingo. And I think that's what raises confidence and trust too. It's like leaders saying, hey, it's not just as I'm just going to be like secretly looking at these metrics. No, tell your employees, like, here's how what you told us and what we did based on your feedback is leading to improvements. Like, be transparent, right? Share this scorecards, right? That share, like, here's what you see in the metrics, or ask the team to. Sometimes it can be very informal. Say, what do you think that the changes that we implemented, are these things working? Do you see changes? Sometimes we are not, as leaders, maybe a manager of a large frontline team, you don't see what the customers are saying, but allow your employees to tell you, like, oh, after we implemented this change, we're hearing more positive feedback from customers, right? So try to bring those guys, like, employees can tell you if the listening efforts and the changes you're making are also working or not, right? So informally, just checking, are the changes working? So good idea, Marwan. That's true. That's a very good one.
Thank you, everyone. And we still have the Q&A open. That's Jill,
More?
if I'm saying it correctly. I really enjoyed the session, but I have to leave.
Oh, okay. Well, you get the recording, I guess, a little bit later. But thanks so much for joining us, everybody, for
Yeah,
sticking with us.
thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. And Raja and Lizette, honestly, thank you so much for taking the time to go through all of this. It is a really, really important topic for today, I believe, as well. So again, thank you all. And just as a friendly reminder for everybody that had to leave halfway through the session, we will be sending the recording over to you in your emails. And then we'll also be sharing any of those interesting resources that we're covering alongside the slides and some of the results from this Mentimeter. So again, just be sure to click that, go through the Mentimeter, submit your responses, and we'll definitely be circling back on that. So thank you all for that. Really appreciate your time here.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you so
everyone.
much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. We appreciate.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
wonderful day.
Have
Thank
a
you,
great
team.
rest of your day. Take care now. Bye.
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 Bye.